Guess who's getting back to a commitment to weekly podcast episodes? Would you like to learn the top 3 online business mistakes I've made over the past 4 years? This episode is the right place to learn that.
Are you ready to take your message, your business, and your life to the next level?
Want to learn from someone with more than a decade of experience, training tens of thousands of people from all around the world?
Hi, Cliff. This is Pauline from Auckland, New Zealand.
John from Calgary, Alberta.
Amy Porterfield.
Michael Hyatt.
Dan here from Dunedin, New Zealand.
Ray Edwards. Mark Mason. Mike Stelzner.
Pat from Smart Passive Income.
It's Darren from Melbourne, Australia.
Now is the time to live the life of your dreams and do the work you feel most called to do in the world.
Welcome to the Cliff Ravenscraft Show.
Here's your host, Cliff Ravenscraft.
That's right, my friend. Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of the Cliff Ravenscraft Show. One of the weekly episodes moving forward, I'm happy to announce is back. Hey, in this episode, I'm sharing the top 3 business mistakes I've made over the past 4 years. I've decided I am definitely going to be coming back with regular, consistent, weekly, and inspired content. More on that in this episode. One of the ways that I'm going to be doing it is by actually recording it originally as a live stream on my various social platforms. And that's exactly what I did for this episode. And here is this week's installment of the Cliff Ravenscraft Show. Today, I'm going to be sharing with you some life lessons, some business lessons that I've learned. In fact, I'm going to share with you what I consider to be, off the top of my head, the top 3 online business mistakes that I've made over the past 4 years. Now, for those of you that don't know, I have been in full-time, self-employed online business ownership in the content creating world since January 2008. And I started as a hobby back in December 2005. Since then, I have created a total of 50 different podcast shows over the years, and I am quickly approaching 4,800 podcast episodes. To say that I like to create content is a little bit of an understatement, and it has been an incredible method of attracting the attention of a lot of people around the world. And so much of my success over the years has been a result of just how much content I've produced, how many different shows that I've produced related to different specific targeted subject areas, niches, if you will. But most importantly, is how consistent I showed up for those various audiences over the years. As a result of that, I've had a consistent flow of people coming into my sphere, an awareness of who I am, what my message is, and in various different ways, depending on who you are, what I have to offer of value to you. What I mean by that, for example, is there was a podcast I did many years ago. I think it was 2012. And I did 38 episodes of a podcast called The Virtual Assistant Podcast. In that podcast, I showed up once a week, every week, for 9 months, sharing my journey, my process of learning how to work efficiently and effectively as an online business owner using a virtual assistant. Prior to the start of that podcast, I had just hired my very first VA, didn't know much about it. I was very excited about my experience early on. And in my main podcast at the time, I was consistently sharing that journey. But since that podcast at the time was called Podcast Answer Man and not the Virtual Assistant Podcast, I figured I probably should get back to sticking to the topic of podcasting. Back in the day, that's what I felt like I needed to do for that particular show. And so I spun off a new podcast on a new topic, as I have done on many different topics over the years. But the thing that made that show a success is, number one, I had a passion for the topic. I had a deep desire to share my experiences, what I was learning. It was specialized knowledge. I was investing countless hours of my own life learning, sometimes by trial and error, how to effectively work with a virtual assistant. And I was sharing what I was learning as I went along. And I did that once a week, every week for 9 months. Now, that podcast has not gotten a new episode since December 2012. It is currently May 23rd, 2024, as I am recording here today. And I am excited to tell you that that podcast still today gets somewhere between maybe 100 and sometimes as many as 300 new subscribers every single month. And a very large percentage of those new subscribers go back to episode number 1 and listen to all 38 episodes. So this is why I've created so much content over the years, and I've always enjoyed it until something shifted about 4 years ago. Which brings me to the first mistake over the past 4 years that I want to share. And that first mistake is this: I stopped producing consistent, regular content on my main podcast show. Now, my main podcast show is called The Cliff Ravenscraft Show. Some people know it by the name Mindset Answer Man. It had, I think that title is somewhere in either the subtitle of the show in the podcast directories, or certainly people know me as the Mindset Answer Man today. But that show was originally started as the Podcast Answer Man. I think it was about 480 some odd episodes when I rebranded from Podcast Answer Man to Mindset Answer Man. And that show today, let me go to thecliffravenscraftshow.com. So let me pull this up here. Today, that show has 730 episodes. Provided everything goes well with this live stream and this recording today, this will be episode number 731 of the Cliff Ravenscraft Show. So there's certainly a large back catalog, to say the very least. But about 4 years ago, by the way, I should say, up until 4 years ago, all the way from December 2006 until about 4 years ago, I produced at least one episode per week, every week, without fail, and sometimes a little bit more than one episode per week, but I tried to keep it one per week, every week. And I did that for more than a decade. But about 4 years ago, I made a decision to stop producing every week. There were a couple of reasons that seemed right at the time for me. One of the things that came to my mind was that sometimes I felt like I was creating content for the sake of staying consistent, meaning that I need to come up with something to share. Now, knowing what I know today, there's really never a shortage of things to come up with to share. But I may have an experience in my life where I'm not maybe being as intentional about my schedule and my priorities, or I may be excited about other priorities, and I may be very intentionally going all in on something new that's a passion of mine. I can't quite recall exactly what the details were, but I do know this. It was weighing on me. Matter of fact, I would begin to use this language. Oh my gosh, I have to create another episode of the Cliff Ravenscraft Show before the end of the day today. And anytime I get into this I have to language, I know that what was once a commitment has become an obligation. One of my favorite quotes that I picked up from Rich Litfin over the last couple of years is, most people are over-obligated and under-committed. I don't know if I heard about that before or after I made the decision to no longer produce every single week. But I do recall going to my audience and saying, hey, I know I've published every single week for more than a decade. I think it was up to 12 years or something like that, maybe longer. But I know I've been here every single week. However, with all the things that I'm doing today, with all of these things, I feel like sometimes I'm not bringing the best that I have to offer. I'm not living up to my own standard of what I want to deliver here. And as a result of that, I've made the decision that I'm moving to a new format or a new philosophy, I guess, of creating content. And that is inspired content only. Now, I will say that many years prior to that, I had been introduced to a philosophy from Michael Hyatt back when he was talking about blogging. And he had stated that one of the shifts that he decided to make was to blog less frequently than he had been used to doing. I think he was blogging sometimes 2, 3, maybe more a week, but at least 2 or 3 blog posts a week. And he began to really draw that back quite a bit. And when he was teaching in one of his private workshops or somewhere, I recall him introducing this philosophy of minimum effective dose. All right. How much medication should a doctor give a patient? And the answer is give them the minimum effective dose. Give them as much as it takes for the medication to get the desired results for the patient. But whatever you do, don't over-medicate them. And he equated that or used a metaphor of that for creating content. You know, what is the overall desired outcome for you to create content? And are you creating too much content? In fact, I do believe that there's the potential of overfeeding your audience, creating too much content. But today I sit there and I finished, it took me about 5 days, but I just finished the most recent Lex Fridman podcast episode or YouTube video. I assume it's a podcast as well, but I watched it on YouTube the entire thing through. If you haven't seen it, there's a 4-hour episode where Lex Fridman is in the Amazon jungle with his friend, and their conversation is gripping, to say the very least. And over the years, I've listened to a number of his interviews with people that are very much of interest to me. And I've also found myself listening to long-form episodes of the Joe Rogan podcast from time to time. And I'm like, wait a second, those are way over. And some of those guys are publishing very frequently. And so I was like, okay, maybe this minimum effective dose. I'd like to dive into my thoughts on that. But certainly there was an influence there. So at one point, I made this decision. It's like, you know what? I will continue to create content for this, my main podcast, The Cliff Ravenscraft Show. But here's what I'm going to say. And I remember saying these words. I will never create another episode of this podcast ever again unless I feel that it is inspired, unless I can't not publish it. And I don't know what that looks like. This was me saying 4 years ago. I don't know what that looks like. I would imagine it's going to be approximately at least once a month. It could be once every 6 weeks. It could be once every, I don't know the answer to that. But what I do know is if you get an episode of the Cliff Ravenscraft Show, it will be an inspired piece of content. It will be outlined. It will be high value. It will deliver excellence. It will be transformative. It's that kind of quality moving forward. And for the last 4 years, I've stuck to that commitment. I've stuck to that philosophy. So much so that it was reinforced one day. This was about 3 years ago. I met someone on Clubhouse. Her name was Megan Porta, and she and I connected via Clubhouse. She found out that I had a podcast. She resonated with what I was doing on Clubhouse. She's like, wow, I really like how Cliff shows up and he's serving these people. And I especially like the way that he helps people see things from a different perspective. And she says, that really resonated with me. And then she, in an email, said, Cliff, I want you to know that after finding you on Clubhouse and after that exchange and after finished watching your room, I went and discovered that you had a podcast. I went and subscribed to your podcast. And she said, I have been binge listening to your podcast for the last several weeks. And effectively, I think it was something like 20 or 30 podcast episodes that she had listened to during that period of time. I may be exaggerating, but it's in my mind, that's what I recall. It was a lot. An absolute lot. And one of the things she said, she goes, I couldn't get enough. And one of the things I want to let you know is it's my absolute goal to hire you as my coach, as my business coach one day. Well, we began exchanging back and forth, and she did become one of my business coaching clients. And I was happy to have her as a client for 2.5 years. So, and she still reaches out to me for some advice every now and then, but it's been this incredible experience. And here's what I came away with as I thought about that. Wow, I'm glad that I moved to this inspired content only, because my thought was, I wonder what it would be like if she would have discovered my podcast and the first episode that she listened to was one of those episodes where it was kind of, maybe I just had to come up with something, and here I am. Let me just share my thoughts, and here's a topic. It's not truly inspired. I haven't really outlined the whole thing. Oh my gosh, I don't have enough time to edit it because of all the other things on my schedule or whatever. What if that was her first episode? Or what if her first episode was a 10 out of 10 piece of content? And then the second was a 10 out of 10 piece of content. But then there were a couple of, I don't want to say duds. I don't think I published duds, but lower than my standard. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm like, her feedback reinforces this. And I doubled down on inspired content only. However, what I can tell you is that today, as of May 23rd, 2024, if I were to look back and think about any mistakes that I've made over these past 4 years, since this whole COVID pandemic sort of situation occurred in our world, the first mistake is actually stopping the weekly, consistent production of the show. Why do I label it as a mistake? What lessons have I learned? Well, number one is that my subscriber count for the podcast, or the number of downloads per episode, has exponentially dropped as a result of it. You see, for years, people were like, man, Cliff releases an episode every single Friday. Without fail, by 5 a.m., there's always a new episode every Friday. Sometimes he releases it on Thursday, but every Friday, I know that I'm going to have a podcast. And some people said, you know what, Cliff, I always took you with me on the weekend trips to such and such. I had to commute every weekend to go somewhere, or every weekend I went for a run, preparing for a marathon or training for a marathon or whatever. And you were always there with me every week without fail. And then all of a sudden, I came up with this idea of inspired content only. And I said, guys, whatever you do, don't unsubscribe. New content will come. I just don't know when. And I look back today and I see that as a mistake. I lost a lot of subscribers as a result of this. Now, the other thing that I will say is that I think that I probably have lost the potential for a lot of new subscribers. Don't get me wrong. There are people like Megan Porta, who discovered me from some source, whether it was in a Clubhouse room a couple years ago during the pandemic or some other avenue. Maybe you've heard about me from a podcast interview I did on your favorite podcast. And then you say, hey, Cliff's got a podcast. And if you look at it and it's like, oh, wow, it looks like he's publishing about 1 or 2 episodes a month, and you're looking for your next regular feed of having a part of your daily or weekly routine, adding a new schedule, putting somebody new into the rotation for listening to, I think I might have missed some folks where it's like, okay, this podcast is so sporadic, I might subscribe to it, but I'm going to put Cliff down at the bottom of the list, and I'm going to keep the people who produce every week at the top. Now, the only reason I say that is anecdotally, it's also autobiographical. I know that if I look at my own Pocket Cast app subscriptions, I put the regular consistent stuff at the top, and I put the things that are less consistent at the bottom. And eventually, I usually almost always unsubscribe from the inconsistent stuff. So there's that. Then recently, I was reading Graham Cochrane's book, How to Get Paid for What You Know. Graham and Graham's one of my business coaching clients. I worked with him for 6 months when he was transitioning from his Recording Revolution business as his primary focus to his Graham Cochrane personal brand, where he helps people with online business. GrahamCochrane.com, by the way. And also this book, How to Get Paid for What You Know. And as I was reading through Graham's book, it reminded me of how important consistent content was for driving so much of the opportunity to reach new people and have a consistent flow of just these new listeners, new people in my sphere of influence, and being able to consistently bring them current, consistent, updated content saying, hey, I'm here, I'm top of mind, I'm delivering fresh new stuff. And also, one of the things that he mentions in his book, he says, listen, I'm going to tell you a little secret. The best people to sell your products and services to are the people who are newest to your community, who are the most excited about you right now. So the essence is, hey, you've got somebody who just found out about you, and they are super excited about the value that they've just received, the insights they've just got from you. And now is the time to show up consistently with new stuff. And this leads me, by the way, to my second mistake. And that is I have not consistently emailed my email subscriber, my email newsletter, my email list consistently enough. Now, I do have things set up where if you are brand new to me today and you sign up for, let's just say, my All Beliefs Have Consequences talk over at it's over at mindsetanswerman.com/free. Mindsetanswerman.com/free. But if you go there and you sign up, and a lot of people do, you get onto my email list and you automatically will receive one email per week, every week for 42 weeks straight, because there's already that evergreen, super valuable content. However, that content is not optimized for sales. It's optimized for providing value. It's optimized for remaining top of mind. It's optimized for nurturing a relationship, but it's not optimized for sales. It's not optimized for providing you an offer of the things that I've got available today. So if there's anything, the other thing I would say, not only have I not consistently created new email content and consistently sent out offers of how you can engage with me and get private, direct access to me through my products and services on a consistent basis. Not only have I not done that, but I've also not prioritized my, let's just say, pipelines of who are you and how do I get you, who is a perfect fit for this product, how do I get you intentionally over here to where this organically, or not organically, but very intentionally shows you what I have to offer. So, for example, if you are somebody who has been a pastor for the last 30 years of your life, and now you want to be a full-time paid coach, and you want to build a profitable coaching business. Well, I have a program called the Next Level Coaching Program. You can find it over at cliffravenscraft.com, and then it says, "Are you a coach?" up in the nav menu. Click on that and check it out. But if you are a coach, right now, the only opt-in I have is my All Beliefs Have Consequences talk, which is not necessarily optimized to capture the attention of a coach, but many people who do sign up for my mailing list using that email opt-in are coaches and have a definite desire to take their coaching to a whole new profitable level. And I have a product for that, but I don't have anything set up in my automations to number one, find out if you're a coach, to do the segmentation, tagging, and then putting you into a specific sequence of emails that will introduce you to, number one, the value that I have to offer, some great insights that will immediately get you some greater results, not only in your transformative experience of coaching, teaching you some frameworks, formulas, and techniques that will create lasting change for your clients so that you can get them results, transformation that they desire, but also I've got some amazing techniques on marketing and sales, and specifically how to master the prosperous coach method for creating clients, which is from the book The Prosperous Coach by Steve Chandler and Rich Litvin. Great book as well, by the way. So I have not optimized those things. I have not given it my attention. And the reason why for that is, again, I'm thinking minimum effective dose. There's already 42 weeks worth of emails. And, maybe occasionally I'll send out a marketing message here and there, and it's one-off, and it's well-earned because these people have at least once a week, every week for 42 weeks have gotten emails from me. Some of those who have been on my email list for, let's just say, the last 10 years or more, those people may have gone the last 3 months without an email message, but they know enough about me and the value that I have to bring that they're not unsubscribing when I send them a message every now and then. However, still, I clearly see it as a mistake of not emailing my email list at least once a week. And that is something that I hope to address here moving forward. I want to share with you my third mistake that I've made as an online business owner in the last 4 years. It was not keeping up my most life-giving early morning routine. You see, when the pandemic hit and it closed down the gyms, one morning, what I had been doing every morning for 5.5 years was no longer available to me. And what I'm talking about is getting up early in the morning, heading straight to the gym. And there's this parking lot behind the gym where I would sit and do reading, studying, journaling, meditating, prayer, just all of this personal self-care time. And then I would go into the gym and get my workout in. And then I would drive home listening to incredible personal and professional development materials. I call it my move time now. Matter of fact, I used to call it Tony time because I would always be listening to a Tony Robbins program on repeat. And I still do that very consistently. But I also now have cycled in some other materials. And so I call it my move time. And I'm trying to see if I can remember the acronym. It is my mobile optimized vehicle education. Is it education? Yeah, I think Education. I think that's it. I'm trying to see if I can find it here because I want to find out. Let me go in here, and it's called Move Time Mobile. Yeah, it's just called education. By the way, this new acronym, I just changed it. So it is Mobile Optimized Vehicle Education. That's what I give my commute time to and from the gym, and also anytime that I'm on the go. And sometimes I will just go for a drive in my car for no other reason than to listen to some audio optimized educational material. Anyway, so my morning routine, what was working for me? I was either up at 4 in the morning or 5 in the morning. I would immediately drive to the gym, 20, 25 minutes. I'm at the gym, sitting in the back parking lot for anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 or 2.5 hours, reading, studying, journaling. I go into the gym at least 45 minutes. I won't admit to you how long sometimes I spent in the gym. I was an absolute gym rat for 5.5 years. And then I would drive home, more educational material on the way home. And that was my life for 5.5 years. And then one day during the pandemic, there's a sign that says CDC has closed the doors. You can't come in. We'll see you in 2 weeks. And then in 2 weeks, it still wasn't there. And lo and behold, I got out of my routine. And one of the biggest mistakes that I made 4 years ago was not getting back into that routine. Now, don't get me wrong. I, in 2021, had a couple of weeks where I got back into it, and then it wasn't the same routine. I didn't do exactly what I was doing then. I tried something different. I spent my early mornings here, and I was doing my workouts later in the day. So I did still benefit from an early morning routine during certain seasons, but it was different. My early morning was spent here. It was spent in a spiritual development and a spiritual transformation situation for me. But it was not go to the gym. Now, during those times, I sometimes would go and work out in the afternoon. It was a different gym. And if you want to converse with me in deeper forms, you can ask me why there's a big deal about the gym that I used to go to and that I'm back to going to now, and the different gym that I was going to during the days, and how that just was not providing the same feel and the same vibe, the same routine. Anyway, I won't bore you with all the details, but what I will just say is that I got out of my routine of early morning, get up, go do this thing at this place exactly this way. It was just perfect, and I never once went back to it until 5 weeks ago. All right. Again, I've had various different seasons of the early morning routine. I've had a couple of seasons of going back to the gym, but still not anything meaningful. As a result of that, definitely has had a hit on my physical health in certain seasons. There has definitely been a hit on just other different aspects of my daily scheduling and all this other stuff. And not to mention the fact that when I had previously, my most recent getting out of my early morning routine, that really threw me off. And also, as a result of not creating consistent content, not having a consistent flow of new people who are consistently excited about me right now, I'm just barely putting out content for my existing audience, who has probably about 98% of them have known me for more than a decade, which, by the way, is probably the reason why when I was bringing in some new clients, people signing up for my Next Level Mastermind or my coaching and stuff like that, when they filled out an application, what made you decide to sign up? He's like, people were saying, Cliff, I've been listening to your content since 2010, or I found you in 2013, and it's like, okay, so occasionally putting out a podcast episode is in creating a compelling call to action has gotten somebody to say, okay, now's the time for me, and maybe that's you. So if now's the time, feel free to email me, cliff@cliffravenscraft.com. Anyway, the reality is that I'm not putting out this new content and having something consistent flowing for new people. As a result of that, I relied on a lot more of effort for me to go out hunting and gathering, or me going out and canvassing all of the areas where I can go and be known in front of people. And so I would go and I would be a guest on 10 or 15 other people's podcasts in a given month. And as a result of that, I would have an influx of new people who now know about me, and they signed up for some sort of call to action I did at the end of that. I'd bring them through the Prosperous Coach method, and I would have them as a client. And then once I had those few sales, hit my numbers financially for the business, everything's hunky-dory, and then it's all about serving them. And then when I need new clients, there's not this consistent flow of content. There's not this consistent email marketing. And so I would need to go out and do a whole canvas campaign. Let me get on 10, 15 more podcasts. Let me speak at some virtual workshops for some of my friends. Let me go to their mastermind group and teach something. And there'd be a new flex of and I'm like, I'm reading Graham's book and I'm like, hello, this could be easily solved. By the way, I just want to say this. Is it possible to do what the Prosperous Coach method the Prosperous Coach book talks about? Is it possible for you to build an incredibly profitable coaching business without a podcast, without a blog, without an email newsletter, without a YouTube channel, and without social media at all? And the answer to that question is yes, it is possible. Now, just because it's possible, is it what I want to do moving forward? No. Have I done it successfully for the last 4 years? Well, to some degree. I mean, I have still shown up. I have still created content over the last 4 years. But have I benefited from the consistent showing up every single week for the Cliff Ravenscraft Show and also these other various different podcasts, creating content consistently? Have I benefited from getting serious about setting up some really intentional frameworks inside of my email newsletter that puts people into the right path of what I have to offer versus just this, a smorgasbord of potentially encouraging content every Monday morning? I mean, it's valuable. People tell me all the time they're hitting reply and they're telling me it's valuable, but it's not really sending them anywhere. Yet I've not done anything to change that over these last 4 years. So here's what I want to say. Life lessons, all right? Business lessons. Number one, I am definitely coming back to consistent content. For the Cliff Ravenscraft Show, for me, I plan to be back here with at least one episode per week, each week moving forward. That is something that I desire to create. And I'm like, well, what about that whole inspired content only? You know what? Some of the reason why I felt the lack of inspiration is because I got out of my morning routine. All right? I now see that. It's very clear because I'm back in my morning routine. About 6 weeks ago, I started getting back up at 4 a.m. every morning. The next question I'm asked all the time, Cliff, what time do you go to bed? Usually between 8 and 10 p.m., almost always right around 8. On average, sometimes as late as 9, sometimes occasionally at 10. I take a nap, by the way, every Monday through Friday in the middle of the day. So, but about 6 weeks ago, I started getting up at 4 a.m. And here's my morning routine today. I am feet on the floor at 4 a.m. Not 4:01, not 4:02. In fact, most of the time, my feet are on the floor at 3:50 a.m. But by 4 a.m., feet on the floor. I am out of the house and in my car by 4:30 a.m. Usually a bit earlier, but by 4:30, I'm in my car. That is an absolute commitment to myself. That means that unless there's construction on the expressway, which by the way there is, but they're usually wiping it off, they're wiping the barrels off the highway and clearing it all up, and there's not a lot of traffic at 4:30 in the morning, in case you didn't know. But I am at the gym in the back parking lot by 5 a.m. That's my commitment. And so 4 weeks ago, I started getting up at 4 a.m. But what happened was for that first week, I'm like, I'm getting up at 4 a.m., but I'm coming to my office and I'm getting sucked into my work and I'm this and that. And before I know it, I've just worked all day. And I was telling Stephanie, she goes, well, since you're getting up you're back in this early morning routine, why don't you go back to what you were doing when everything was like just a well-oiled machine? Why don't you go back to Planet Fitness, Fort Wright, and do your early morning routine there? And that was 5 weeks ago. And so I'm there by 5 a.m. And then I am in that parking lot for at least 90 minutes. And I'm reading, I'm studying, I'm journaling, I'm outlining content. I am inspired like nobody's business, just like I used to. Back when I was doing this before the pandemic, I was marketing Free the Dream Conference. I was vlogging every day. I mean, I was inspired all the time. And I'm like, well, gosh, now that I'm back at it, and there's something about this exact space. There's the environment that I'm in this early morning routine. It is awesome, and I'm in the gym. My endorphins and dopamine's kicking in, and all the good stuff. I am back in my early morning routine, and specifically the routine that is exactly the one that I did for 5.5 years that was the most life-giving. And now the inspiration is rolling, and it couldn't have come at a better time because I'm like, okay, I am ready to benefit from routine, consistent, at least once a week content for the Cliff Ravenscraft Show. For those that don't know this, I'm already every single week producing a show called Life, the Ultimate Choose Your Own Adventure podcast with my friend Daphne Scott. You can find that over at chooseyourownadventurepodcast.com. That's technically her production, but we co-host it together. You can check that out. So I'm consistently every single week showing up for that podcast. I am now going to consistently show up for this podcast. Just 2 days ago, my friend and prior client, Graham Cochran, just published an episode where he's talking about Alex Hormozy going to long-form content and the lessons you can learn from it. And what I realized is like, wow, I want to start showing up the way that I used to on YouTube very frequently. And since I have the ability to live stream, I'm going to stream to LinkedIn. I'm going to stream to Facebook. I'm going to stream to YouTube, and I'm going to stream to X. And I just got notice from TikTok that I can now upload up to 1 hour videos on TikTok. I know it's not short form content, but I'm still going to upload it there. I had toyed with the idea of creating short video content. Those little things with all this, it's just not my style. And I don't desire to have somebody else create those things for me out of my clips. I just want to get behind a microphone and talk. And I really loved what Graham recently talked about. It's like, listen, people who are addicted to short form content, get what you're saying and let me flip and get to the next thing. Those have never been his clients, and they've never been my clients either. Now, I'm not saying that my clients don't watch that content. I'm just saying that that's not where they go to find their mentor, their coach, their this or their that. They might actually, my clients are people who are engaged and ready to listen to something that's long form. I look at the live stream here, and there is a number of people who are watching this concurrently on all of these different platforms that I'm streaming on. And they've been here since the beginning, and they're still here now. You're listening to my voice right here, right now. So long-form content is still alive, and it's still active, and it's still valuable. And while it may not be for everyone, it may not be the trend, it may not be what everyone's addicted to, but my audience, my clients, my ideal customers, they are the ones who are absolutely into unceasing personal and professional growth, who are absolutely always looking to take their personal life, their professional life, their relational life, their health and fitness, and their business life, everything to the next level. That's my audience, and they're willing to watch content. They're willing to watch long form. They're willing to listen to long form. And it's like, And then I was thinking about production value. Do I really need to go in and edit out everything? Like I said, this is nearly my 4,800th podcast episode. I don't have a lot of ums. This podcast episode has had no preparation other than coming up with the topic, the top 3 online business mistakes I've made over the last 4 years. I then wrote down business mistake number 1. I stopped producing content for my main podcast every single week. Mistake number 2, I haven't consistently emailed my email audience at least once a week consistently. And mistake number 3, I allowed myself to get out of the most life-giving routine, which went with it my inspiration to create content. But those are so I had the title, I had those 3 things, and that's it. And then I scheduled this live. I did go into Canva and I created a thumbnail. I went into GPT and said, hey, here's the title and here's the 3 things. Can you write a 1-paragraph description? I did all of that. And 10 minutes later, I went live on StreamYard. And here I am, right here, right now, creating content. And there's no B-roll. There's no quick jump cuts. There's no editing. None of that. I am just here sharing my experience. And I'm inspired. And I believe that I have the potential moving forward as I maintain my early morning routine. As I make this commitment to showing up here, I know that I will never run out of inspiration and things to share from what I'm learning, to share with you, to help you free the dreams inside of you. Whether you're an online business owner looking to figure out how to create products and services that benefit and serve others, that are aligned with what you feel most called to do in this world and that pays your bills so that you can be full-time self-employed, or whether you're a coach and you need to learn how to get clients. By the way, check out Cliff's Notes on Profitable Coaching. You can find that podcast over at notesoncoaching.com. Or whether you're looking for a community of other next level entrepreneurs, people who are established entrepreneurs who are already in it. They're in the thick of the business. They've been operating in business for several years. The Next Level Mastermind is something that I have available. I'm going to come here on a consistent, ongoing basis, sharing valuable insights that are there for whatever stage in the journey you are on in your personal and professional development journey. And I am going to bring those insights on a consistent, ongoing basis. Once again, I'm returning to my roots, and I hope that you will join me. And by the way, if you were once subscribed to the Cliff Ravenscraft Show and you're not now would be the time to resubscribe. And also, moving forward, I'm going to probably be creating as much content as I can, live streamed and produced in video format as well, and then take all of that and put it into my podcast feeds. Those are the lessons that I've learned, the top 3 mistakes. I've made more mistakes in my business, by the way, in the past 4 years, but these are the top 3 mistakes that I've made in the last 4 years. I encourage you, whatever your message is, if you are a business owner and you use content marketing, learn from my mistake. Create consistent content. Number 2, If you are not already emailing a mailing list of people who are subscribed to get updates from you at least once a week, learn from my mistake. Email them at least once a week. And number 3, if you don't have some sort of life-giving routine that makes you come alive, that absolutely fuels the fire of your passion and your message, I encourage you to go in search of that routine. That is my message today. Until next time. Oh, by the way, call to action. I want to give you a call to action. All right? Call to action. What would you like to hear me talk about? Give me any topic that you would like me to speak about in a podcast episode moving forward. I will consider it for a future episode. All you have to do, email me, cliff@cliffravenscraft.com. Put topic for your podcast in the, what do you call that? The subject line. And I will definitely consider it. Until next time, my friends, I encourage you to take everything you do to the next level.
Mindset Answer Man.